What's up? It's the Bionicle Inspiration Series. Welcome. Hope you're having a good time. This episode is continuing our coverage of the Bio Cup 2018. This episode, we're going to talk a little bit about Round 3. And whether you have entered this round and you've made it this far, we're hoping we can inspire you a little bit with this episode, or perhaps you didn't enter the Bio Cup at all, or you got taken out of the competition by someone else. Heck, maybe you'll get some ideas from this, because hey, contests are always something that can help get the creative juices flowing. It's always a good time, always a lot you can learn. So this episode is covering some mocks that are not part of the Bio Cup, just to hopefully inspire those planning on building something related to the theme. I did promise in the last episode that we would be continuing our coverage of round 2 question. It is round 2. Man, I hate these numbers. I think it's the last round. I said that I would be covering stuff from the last round, and I still will. However, that'll be tomorrow. I wanted to get this out as soon as I could because the everything was just announced. So I figured, why not get this out as soon as possible so that the people who have entered have a bit more time to see it early, so that they can continue to get those creative juices flowing and get as much time as they can to make the best entry. So this round, if you are not fully aware, is on... Let me read what the Flickr group says it's about. So, it's got 3 subcategories this time. One is a dystopian future, a utopian future, or an anachronist future. So if you don't know what that means, a dystopian future is the idea of the future has gone to crap, and, you know, something like, I don't know, Terminator or The Matrix or something, you know, it's a not so good future. A utopian future is the perfect future. Everything's fine, everything turned out good, no more wars. Think, I don't know, Star Trek or the Jetsons, something cool like that. And the anachronism, which I'll admit, this is the first time I've heard about that, this is those awesome, really funny futures where it's something like flying aeroplane dinosaurs, pirates with laser guns, robot ninjas, things like that. So you can pick, well, no, you can't pick any of those 3. People are allotted to one of those 3. But even still, this episode is just going to basically be covering mocks that fit into those categories. So without further ado, let's begin. The first mock we have is by Joxon and is called Necrohiver. I guess you could classify this under... You could kind of classify it under anachronism, I suppose, to a very slight degree, but I more saw this as a dystopian future. I actually have some really funny, like, canon Lego seriousness in there to a degree, because there was a Lego racing game. I can't remember what it was. My brother used to play it. And the little like intro before you began is, it's like, the year is whatever year it was, and it's like, the world has now turned to racing. The future is racing. All that people do is racing. And I was like, what? What? When would humans and Earth reach a stage when you're like, you know what? Life just isn't worth living. Let's just race cars all day. And this kind of reminds me of that. It's like that, I don't know what, I guess that's a utopia, but this mock looks really dark, so I see it as a dystopia. But I like that idea of a racing future, which seems surprisingly common in in Lego Racer sets. But also that, as well as this is generally just sort of very sci-fi like. And with dystopia, even with utopias, you quite often see a lot of that sort of stuff. You often see, you know, sci-fi influences, speeder bikes, flying cars, spaceships, all that sort of stuff. And so this fits in quite nicely with that. And so I think that's something to definitely think about. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on in this mock and what's so awesome about it. One, it gets to play with minifigures. You know, if this was something you entered into the Bio Cup, it's always something cool to kind of toy around with and play with. You know, minifigures are always fun to play with. You know, it's not something we always see that commonly in Bionicle or Hero Factory. We have technically seen it once with Hero Factory, but besides the point, maybe that's something to think about, is building something to a minifigure scale, or that a minifigure would be able to ride or be a part of. Something to think about, something cool. Some other things I really like is just the way that this looks photographed. Now, this was entered into a contest, if I am correct. I am wrong. My bad. No, I'm right. Haha! I think there was a contest on Flickr a while back called, I think, District 18? Mad, I should have checked this before I started the episode. Wow! I don't know. I remember seeing at one point on Flickr there was a whole thing about all these guys building cool racer things like this, and it was sort of like, you know, every person who enters, it's like, this is the rider that you're entering into the speeder race of 2017 or whatever year it was. And it was just cool to see a bunch of people building awesome speeder bikes, and then something sort of to go under it like this, like a racing track, or some people would build this whole little sort of side of a stadium or something like that. It was some really cool results. And that's something that I'm sort of saying is really cool about this, is kind of playing a bit with photography in some regard, and how adding that track at the bottom there, which uses some of those awesome macaroni pipe pieces and a couple other awesome weapon pieces and stuff, and some other parts to create this sort of like track that it would be sort of flying over and stuff. Kind of creates a bit of story, a bit of atmosphere. It's really nice and also really fun because you get to kind of play around with futuristic kind of track race car thingamajigs. It's awesome. It's really cool. Something else that's really cool is I really like the very clever part use of using the lightsaber piece there as sort of like the jet stream coming out of the engine there. That's just clever. Looks really nice, really effective. Again, it works with the way that this is photographed. It's very cool. Also, the overall greeble textures that the bike has, whether that's from these pipe pieces, which sort of have that rimmed effect, some of these system greebly parts there that have both been used on the track and a little bit there on the actual speeder bike, and then you've got some of these grilled slopes and a whole bunch of repeated sort of line grill shape textures there. It just looks mechanical. It looks very bike-like. It looks sort of science fiction-y. It's really awesome, actually. So I think that's really fitting and is a clever way to sort of show off the mechanical science fiction bike-like detail that this has, which is really clever and really cool. So yeah, a lot of awesome stuff going on here. Very nicely done. Let's move on to the next mock, which is by Anthony Wilson and is called Tyrannosaurus Nex. I absolutely love this. Now, this is very, very system heavy, but does use a few Bionicle pieces. And heck, if you're entering the BioCup or you're not and you're just watching the episode, it's always fun to play around with system. And, nowadays, a lot of Bionicle building styles sort of lead a bit more to using a little more system because with having a little less construction these days with the sets that we can buy, there's a lot more, awesome system pieces that are coming out, and there's a lot of room to play with there, whether it's colors or parts or just, there's a lot of exciting opportunity there, so it's definitely something to have a bit of a think about if you are feeling like you need some cool new pieces in your life. Check out some system stuff. So speaking of system stuff, absolutely love the base of this. That's something Anthony very much excels at. I think I've spoken about this before, but this is a brilliant base. I love the little additions of these swords and things there kind of around the base. Kind of relates back to that Nexonite thing, which I suppose I should say. This relates to the, how did you pronounce it? Anachronism, that sort of, that type of future. Because it is robots and dinosaurs, robo-dinosaurs, and Nexonites for that matter, which is kind of an anachronistic thing in itself because it's Space Knights, essentially, isn't it? So, yeah, there's a whole bunch of that too. It's cool. You can kind of play around with some themes that have actually already done that, and you can kind of play off some of those concepts, or combine dinosaurs and space, which is awesome. I mean, Spassel, Space Castle, is always in my opinion, it's something that people don't do enough of, but it's a really fun, clever theme, kind of olden times with new times. It's cool. So, yeah, think about that. Think about actual Lego themes and smush them together, or just concepts like, I don't know, cowboys and aliens, and see what you can do. There was a movie about that, wasn't there? Anyway, let's talk a bit about the mock. Love the feet here, how there's sort of this. They're kind of black. It kind of looks like some of the more mechanical underside parts, and then you see those tubes in there. Really kind of creates this sort of robotic feel to it. A lot of the kind of layering of colors here kind of very much represents where some of the mechanical details are, where some armor's kind of placed on top, things like that. It's really, really clever, really cool. Something else that's really cool is the sort of segmented design on this. You look at the tail, it's just a series of slowly expanding or, decreasing sort of circle thingamajig segments, whatever they're called, that kind of form the whole tail. And, if you kind of squint your eyes or something, it almost looks like a full, free-flowing, organic, natural dinosaur tail, which is really cool. But the fact that he has actually segmented them like that actually lends itself to looking a little more robotic, which fits with the whole anachronismatic theme. Very cool. But also I think that's something to think about, whether you're building a mecha dinosaur or just a regular dinosaur. If you want it to be sort of slightly posable, doing that's a great way to do so, because it's segmented like that, so you can kind of connect it all with ball joints and stuff, and then that way you can get a lot of posability. It still looks sort of natural and flowing, but you don't have to sort of agonizingly and painstakingly spend hours trying to make it all flow together with no gaps. You can kind of create that effect, which works really well. And depending on how you photograph it, like you can kind of see with the neck in some shots, it doesn't even look like there's gaps there. It just looks pretty natural and really cool. So I think that's really awesome. Absolutely love the head on this. Probably the last thing I'll talk about on this, even though this mock is fan-frickin-tastic. I love it. Very cool head. Very, very nicely done. Just using some of those sort of tail pieces, and even the little Nuva shoulder there for the nose. Very, very cool. And again, actually, there's one last quick thing. Again, putting a little minifigure on the top there, just on a turret. Always fun to have a little addition there with a minifigure or something like that. It's kind of similar to what we were talking about before with the last mock. I think it's really cool. Let's take a look at the next mock, which is by VB and is called Koravika. So this one, I guess, was more referring to the dystopia future, if you want to. I kind of took a little bit of liberty on this. You know, those other ones kind of have are very, very deep in dystopia or anachronism or whatever you want to call it, the themes that I assigned them to before. Whereas this one, it could just be, you know, he just built a cool looking alien guy. But I think it's something that's really cool about dystopia or utopia is it's something that doesn't exist. It's in the future. So it's very much up to your imagination. It's up to your ideas, whatever you want it to be. And that's really cool because, yeah, you can make it whatever you want. So, you know, heck, who's to say that the dystopia or even the utopia isn't a zombie invasion or an alien invasion or science has bred these evil red clawed one-eyed beasts and you know, the world populates them. If you can justify it, if you can write a story, if you can justify just about anything, then heck, you know, that'll fit well into the theme there. So I think that's always something to consider, whether it's for the BioCup or your own mocks that you're building at home. Yeah, take your imagination places, come up with some crazy fun ideas, and then put that into Bionicle form and see what you can do, because if you can justify it, it'll be a dystopian future. Meh. Very cool. Anyway, let's talk a bit about why I really like this mock. There's a very, very cool little torso design here. It's kind of trans-orange, which is a little bit in contrast with everything else. I mean, shades and tonally it fits because, you know, orange is relatively close on the color spectrum to the different shades of red and stuff, so it flows very nicely. But it's cool to sort of see those trans-orange parts be used a little more sparingly here. You know, it looks like his eye is trans-orange there, and then you've got those dishes on the hands, and then the little bit on the torso, and I really like that. Just using that dome piece there with that cool sort of bug-looking effect on it there. It kind of almost looks like an egg pouch or something creepy, crawly, scary. And I really like that. It's yeah, it kind of paints a story for the mock. It's really cool and really, really fitting for the kind of bug alien vibe that this has got. I really like that. I also really, really like how he's designed the head on this. Just overall with the mono eye design and those horns, and it looks really nice. But my favorite part is using that dragon head there upside down and then putting those two sort of sword and Ninjago clawy piece things there. Almost looks kind of like a frilled, almost kind of like reptilian look to it. It's very, very cool. I really like that. And yeah, it kind of has this creepy, unhinged alien reptile vibe. It's cool. It's cool. It really fits with this the atmosphere and the aesthetic that this mock has. It's really awesome. And one quick thing that I really like about this, I love how the sort of overall torso and back looks using all these weird sort of almost kind of like wing pieces there, kind of being like thrilled up. It kind of looks like, you know, when like a cockroach, I mean, some cockroaches can fly sort of thing, but how bugs often kind of have that sort of winged effect, whether those wings are used or not, or kind of like a grasshopper or something kind of has that kind of look to it. It just looks bug-like. It's really cool. Very nice use of parts, and even the kind of texture of those parts too looks bug-like. It's creepy, it's crawly, it's nice. I like it. So excellent work, VB. Let's quickly move on to the bonus mock. This episode's going a little longer than I was anticipating. This mock is called Whip, the Council of Norceramus by Mihai Marius Mihu. Now this is the mock for the utopian future, which I hadn't really touched upon yet. I've spoken about dystopias twice now, but here's a mock that is very utopian in nature. So it actually uses a lot of system, this mock, but again, you can use system in the BioCup, and even if you're not in the BioCup, take a look at your system. It's always fun to use. I think the color scheme is something that's really important to talk about in this, is because if there was black or grey in there, well, that's not that's a dystopian future. Yeah, utopia is a perfect future. You know, why would there be those ugly colors there? It's cool to see a very bright, uplifting color scheme, white and gold. It almost looks like heaven, or, you know, interpretations of what heaven looks like. It's really cool. And then you got like a waterfall in the background, or it's a big old window or something like that. It just looks cool. And also the use of symmetry here, I think, is very, very clever. Using some of those design elements that you might have learned about in art school or in school or whatever. I think it's clever. Using symmetry there, it creates order, everything looks nice, it's very aesthetically pleasing. And if it's a utopian future, that's kind of what it is. It's a perfect future. The fact that it's perfect, it makes sense to do that. And so I think that's really cool in itself, is doing that. Using the color, using the overall look, the overall composition of it to sort of subtly convey aspects of perfect, because that's what a utopia is to a degree. So I think that's really cool. It was really clever. But yeah, that too. Do you have to make a humanoid or an animal or a toa or whatever? want to make a cool looking city like this. I think it's pretty cool. Anyway, that's it for this episode. Hopefully you're enjoying the coverage of the Biocup. I think we're down. Well, I know actually. We are down to our final 9 contestants. So we're getting close to the finale. Let's see where it takes us. Thanks for playing, guys. I'll see you in the next one, which will actually be out tomorrow. Ha ha. Enjoy the Biocup. Happy building. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.